Hey, ladies, does your husband ever have a problem stopping and asking directions? I refuse to ask directions. If I'm not at least 2 states off from where I need to be, I'm not asking directions. Amen? Well, I got one of them GPSs. I'm not even using that thing, man, because, God taught me. We're men folk. We know this stuff. We know directions. Amen? That's north, that's south, that's east, the Pacific. That's east and that's west of the Pacific, east of the land. I'm already lost, man. But we just don't want to stop and ask nobody, do we? Because we always seem to think we can get it done on our own. We think that we'll figure it out eventually. And most time we do, somehow or another, by God's grace. But I think this brother Jay went up and he asked Jesus for help. He asked him to come into his house. And today some of us need to start off by getting on this altar and saying, "Dear Jesus, would you come and live inside of me? Would you come into my house today? Would you come into my family and cover my family with your protection and your provision and your presence? I need the Lord in my house today." And that's one of the problems with the men in the 21st century. We're so proud we don't think we need to ask Jesus for any help whatsoever. And because of it, we are sinking, my friends, and we cannot get out of the hole we're in. But we need to just call out and humble ourselves at the feet of Jesus and call out for his help today. Why did he call out for God's help? Look at his desperation in verse 42. Verse 42 says, "For he had only one daughter, about 12 years of age, and she lay a-dying." This man knew he was going to lose his daughter, his baby girl. He was desperate. Can I tell you something? Some of you brothers are here this morning and you're desperate and don't even know it. Some of you are starting to realize that you're desperate. Let me ask you this much. If you were to lay down and die, do you know where you'll spend eternity today? Because I got news for you. You're going to die. There's appointed unto man wants to die. You know the deal. Death and taxes. That's 2 things we're going to hit. Hey, it's going to happen, brother. You need to prepare yourself. And some of us are desperate men because we haven't got our hearts right with God. Some of us are desperate men because we don't know how to raise our young'uns right. We don't know how to keep them on the right path. I'm telling you, some folks, you can be the perfect parent and still wind up visiting your young'un at a rehab clinic, visiting your young'un at a prison visitation day. You can be a perfect parent, and that's no guarantee your young'uns ain't going to get into trouble. But I want to tell you this much. If you don't at least try to listen to God, then brothers, I hate to see what kind of mess they're going to get in today. And you, my friend, will become desperate too. But don't only look at his desperation. I want to take a moment and look at his desolation. Look down at verse 49. The story goes on, of course, and as you know, Jesus meets the woman with the issue of blood on the way, and he heals her. And then we pick up the story again in verse 49. As Jesus just healed this woman, and he's on his way to Jairus' house, verse 49 says this, "And while he yet spake, there cometh one from the ruler of the synagogue's house," or Jairus' house, "saying unto him, Thy daughter is dead. Trouble not the master." See, this man went from being desperate to being desolate. Can you see the expression on his face when his friend from home comes to him and says, "Brother Jay, don't bother the master no more. Your little girl's dead. I've got bad news. She didn't make it through the night. She just didn't make it. Don't bother Jesus any longer. He's busy. He's got crowds of people thronging him. He's got sick folks around him needing to be healed. Come on back home, Jairus. It's over. It's over." You see this man in his desolation at the moment when he gets the death sentence that his daughter has died. You see his heart is broken. You see him there desolate with no hope whatsoever. And your heart has to go out for him. If you're a father this morning, if you've raised a little girl or even a little boy, and you know what that fear is like that something happened to that child, and you see this brother, and you know he's desolate as they tell him, all hope is lost. She's gone. She quit breathing a while ago. Come on back home. We got funeral plans to make, Brother Jay. But not only is he desperate and desolate, but thirdly, he's got a decision to be made. Look at verse 50. "But when Jesus heard it, he answered him, saying, Fear not, believe only, and she shall be made whole." Brothers, ain't you glad Jesus was on the scene? Because when the guy shows up and tells Brother Jay, your daughter's dead, there's no hope, come on back home, let's go bury your young'un, and let's make funeral plans. Jesus looks up to him and says, Brother Jay, don't be afraid. It ain't really over. But if you believe, he didn't just tell him to believe, he said, believe only, then she shall be made whole. Doesn't want to tell you something. Gentlemen, listen to me. I need the men of God in this house today to realize your faith will make or break your home. It'll make or break your wife. It'll make or break your children. And thank God the Lord has given us another chance to make things right. And He's telling us today, some of us need to go on back home with Jesus in our house, with Jesus in our hearts, and let the Lord make everything whole again. At this time, the greatest doctor in the world was of no use. They could have took her to the best hospital in Jerusalem. It would have been of no effect because she's dead, brother. She's quit breathing. All hope is lost. But Jesus looked at him and said, Brother Jay, don't give up now. I've just begun to work. Now let me put it to you like this, folks, men and women alike. The good Lord knows that we have messed up our lives enough, man. And we have just about blown it. And you know what? Some of us are probably thinking today, there's no hope. But Jesus says, if you believe, and only believe, without doubt, without worry, just believe and trust, you can be made whole too. He had a decision to make. Brother Jay could have very easily said, Jesus, I know you was ready to go and heal her, and I know you could have. It's cool, but it's over now. Let me go home and sulk in my own misery. Let me go home and sit with my own tears. Let me go home and get my wife and let us cry together. You know what? That's what a lot of people do nowadays. They decide they'd rather go home and cry and sulk in their misery instead of letting Jesus change things for them. Now, you got a decision to make too, gentlemen. Today you can either walk out of this church and live in your fear and live in your worry and live in your depression, or you can just come and trust Jesus and say, Lord, I don't know how, but I just believe you've got a way to work things out, and I'm going to put my faith in you today, and God can put things back together in your home too. But not only did Jesus help him in his decision and tell him not to fear, but there's one last thing I want to show you that Jesus done for this fellow, and it's down here in verse 51. Let's read it, see if you pick it out. Verse 51 says, and when he came into the house, he suffered no man to go in, save Peter, James, and John, and the father and the mother of the maiden.